The other day I mentioned that I thought Michael Avenatti might actually be a real contender for 2020 because he's just kind of a doofy tough guy. He's someone who could actually stand up next to Trump, and none of the other Democrats had a backbone. Well, that still may be true, but I'm going to have to say at this point, I think there's absolutely no way Michael Avenatti is going to be the Democratic nominee for 2020. And the reason is, first, here's a scoop from Time. Why Michael Avenatti thinks only a white man can beat Trump. Now, look, I get it. His opinion basically is that someone who's not a white man won't be able to stand up to Trump because of optics and because of, whatever reason, racism, I don't know. Maybe Michael Avenatti thinks that you need white privilege to combat Trump's white privilege. We'll read the story. But it's not just this, because if you're following my main channel, many of you might not be, it's youtube.com/Timcast. The story I did today shows that Avenatti may have actually twisted the words of one of the Kavanaugh accusers. He's being referred to the DOJ and the FBI for criminal investigation for potentially providing false statements to Congress. Michael Avenatti, in my opinion, is done. Dunzo. Look at this story. This is a scoop, right? This is huge news. But there's a good reason for why. Apparently, this is from an interview from 4 months ago. I've got another op-ed asking why NBC News sat on this scoop, and so did Time Magazine. But let's read the story, and I think there's good reason why Time didn't publish this. Michael Avenatti, the lawyer and possible presidential candidate, caused a stir with his contention that there's only one type of candidate who can beat President Trump. In an interview with Time published Thursday, Avenatti said the Democrats' 2020 nominee better be a white male. Whew! Because society affords more credibility to white men than it does others. Though the statement has struck many as inflammatory, it represents a real, if usually private, debate within the Democratic Party, one that is likely to recur as the next presidential election approaches. Avenatti, who once worked as a researcher on political campaigns, clarified his position on Thursday. Avenatti said, "Let me be clear. I have consistently called on white males like me to take responsibility, and be part of stopping the sexism and bigotry that other white males engage in. It is especially important for them to call out other white males. I make this point in my speeches," and there you go. Whether or not Michael Avenatti meant what he said, or whether or not that was offensive, the point remains: the Democratic Party is fractured. Plain and simple, there is going to be an internal debate among the Democrats about the demographic of their candidate, because of course they do it. You'd be crazy to think that there's not some, high-profile individual who's like, $500,000 a year, K Street, Politico kind of guy in D.C. saying, here's what Democrats need. You need this person, you need working class, you need this thing. They know the profile they need and who will likely win. And they calculate all of this stuff. It would be insane if you thought the Democrats weren't talking about race for their next candidate. You'd be crazy. And Avenatti brought up that he thought it had to be a white male, probably because of privilege. But because of these statements, he's now jumped into the identity politics game. When you come up and say that white males got to do this, that, and this, I assure you, you're going to lose middle-aged white working class men and women in this country who don't like identity politics. This is bad news for Avenatti, and the Democrats don't seem to understand that identity politics is bad. Oh, sure, you might rope in some of the urban liberal elite sitting atop their ivory tower complaining about the privileges of the white man. But even in the south side of Chicago, there are working class white people who don't want to hear this. I can tell you this because I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a mixed race neighborhood. And I can't tell you how many times I saw, some white crackhead getting beat by the cops complaining about this, political correctness in politics. It happens, right? Avenatti now apparently is trying to deny he ever said this. Here's what Avenatti told Time in an interview on June 25th in New York City before he began publicly considering a presidential run. Is there anybody that you like in the Democratic political class, or do you think the 2020 nominee should be someone from outside politics? I think it better be a white male. Really? 100%. And I don't say that because I want it to have to be a white male. I say that because of the realities of the situation. I think if the Democrats nominate anyone other than a white male at the top of the ticket, they're going to lose the election. I'd be willing to bet anything. I feel highly confident in that, and it shouldn't be that way for this election. But oh boy, do I got to stop right here and say, no, Michael Avenatti, I think that was racist, and I think you're racist, because Barack Obama won twice. And many of the people who actually voted for Donald Trump had voted for Barack Obama. Plain and simple. If you could look, you've got to win a certain number of electoral votes, and Barack Obama did it twice. I don't believe that the people who voted for him were overtly racist. And the idea that you must run a white male, to me, is absurd considering we just had 2 terms of Barack Obama. Seriously? You think that people wouldn't want to vote for this guy unless he was a white male? That's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing after two terms of Obama, and you still think this? He's plumb wrong. It's going to cost him by bringing this up. So they bring this up, though. They say, so Obama only won because of who he was running against, but a Trump who activates people's racism and sexism? No, I think Obama would have won against a lot of people, but I think this is a very unique situation. I think Donald Trump is a very unique candidate. And I think if you run anyone other than a white male against him in 2020, and I think a lot of people in the party agree with me on this, and I think a lot of people agree with me, I think you are begging for a repeat of 2016. No way in hell. The people of this country are not as overwhelmingly racist as these people want to believe. And look at this. Michael Avenatti's embracing of this identity politics proves just how racist these people are. The fact that he can't wrap his head around America voting for a black president, even though they already did twice, is mind-blowing. And this is what freaks me out about identity politics. This idea among the liberal white elites, these like progressives are overwhelmingly white and wealthy. They think everyone's racist. They see Nazis under every little rock, every mat. There's a Nazi. They say, oh, everyone's a white nationalist. And then Michael Avenatti. Here's the natural conclusion to the insane rhetoric and the insane ideology from the regressive left. You end up with high-profile individuals saying to Time magazine, well, unfortunately, because of racism, you have to have a white male run. So what's going to happen? Internally, the DNC is going to be like, yeah, we do believe white people are privileged. We better get a white male in power if we want to win. That's what happens when you are racist. What do you think's going to happen when you have all these people believing Trump is a racist, thinking that only a white person can beat Trump, and then they're in the DNC. The DNC is going to be like, well, if Trump is racist and everyone in America is racist too, we better run a white male. What about other people who are qualified candidates who are not white males? And what about Barack Obama winning twice? How are you going to tell me that everyone who voted for Donald Trump is a racist? Or no, I'm sorry, that's a bit hyperbolic. People say that not everyone who supports Trump is a racist. Sure. The same people who voted for Obama were willing to vote for Donald Trump. I don't think race is as big a factor as many people believe it is. Sure, there's some data to suggest that some people do have racial animosity, but when it's the left constantly encouraging race-based policies, don't be surprised when then Michael Avenatti says, you better get that white male in 2020, even though you just had Obama. There's something I saw that was really interesting. I started thinking about as to why the alt-right had any prominence at all, white nationalists. And there was a sign I saw, it's a sign you frequently see at protests. It says, respect existence or expect resistance. Lefties carry this all over the place, and they use this sign to represent marginalized communities who they say their existence is not respected. Right. When you start saying the things that like Avenatti said about white males in 2020, when you start screaming at people you're a white male, you're going to have people who feel like you're not respecting their existence. This has nothing to do with who has more privilege or who is on top of society or who is the majority. It has to do with the fact that at an individual level, when you tell someone because they're white X, they will respond with resistance. Plain and simple. There will be a lot of people who will vote Republican simply because you constantly bash them over the skull with white maleness being the problem. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care where you come from. I just care that you agree on certain principles and fundamental rules that we have in this country that makes everyone able to flourish and find the American dream. I often find it really interesting that there are so many immigrants from Southeast Asia who are able to live the American dream. They come here, they open shops, they open restaurants, their kids go to college. And then there are people who were born in this country who claim there is no American dream. Tell that to the migrants who came here legally, opened a shop, and worked their ass off and put their kids through college. When I worked for American Eagle Airlines, there was a Filipino guy who worked double shifts every single day. And there's a limit to how many shifts you can work federally, legally. So eventually they forced him to take a 2-week vacation, and he was pissed about it. He ended up getting paid for 40 hours per week for 2 weeks instead of the 80 he wanted. The reason he worked so hard was that he was putting all of the money into savings for his kids' college. To him, that was the American dream. The country he came from didn't pay that well. And by coming to America and busting his ass all day, every day, 80 hours a week, he was putting his kids through college. And I'd imagine that, that's a kind of person who is going to look down on his descendants, and he's going to know that his hard work paid off and he fulfilled his dream of providing a better life for his kids. We only got a little bit of time, but I want to point out a little bit in the beginning. Why did NBC News and Time Magazine sit on their Avenatti scoops for so long? Now, they say it's interesting that it makes sense Time might have done it because Time was working on a larger profile of him. Here's the other thing you should consider. Why didn't Time release the white male comment early? Because he wasn't talking about running for president. Who cares what he thinks, right? Avenatti was only relevant in the Kavanaugh and Stormy Daniels stuff, but when he started talking about 2020, it became relevant. Time probably should have put something out sooner, but, they report as they report. I'm interested, but what's interesting, though, is that they talk about how NBC News, here's a tweet from Sunny Bunch, "It sure is weird that NBC sat on this while Kavanaugh hearings were actually underway and while Dianne Feinstein was citing Swetnick's obvious lies as a reason to delay on Kavanaugh." We know for a fact that the witnesses brought forth by Avenatti lied. They either lied to NBC News or they lied in their affidavits, because the witnesses, one of them said to NBC directly, they didn't believe what was in the declaration was true, and they walked their claims back. Swetnick went on TV and walked her claims back too. Why then did it take about a month before we actually heard this? And that's what's interesting. It seems like the news has been sitting on this information about Avenatti that makes him look really, really bad. But to wrap everything up before I move on to the next video, why is it that Avenatti is probably done? Well, the white male comments there's no solution. Even though those conversations are probably happening in the DNC, because look, let's admit it, a lot of these people are super racist, it's public now. And those conversations made public, it's like Hillary Clinton said, you have to have a public position and a private position. And apparently that's exemplified here with Avenatti. Because when people hear publicly that he thinks only a white male can win, he's going to lose support. He's racist, plain and simple. But then let's look at the Kavanaugh stuff. He's being referred for criminal investigation, so it is what it is. Anyway, I got more videos coming up in just a few minutes. The next video, my God, university professors are being, I don't want to say forced, but required to pledge allegiance to social justice. Stick around, video coming up in a few minutes.